Max Brantley with the Arkansas Times on Monday, March the 20th. I think the big news today is James Comey, the director of the FBI, appearing before the House Intelligence Committee in Washington and talking about what he can talk about relative to investigations of Donald Trump and Russian activity in the U.S. elections. Comey didn't use these words, but a lot of commentators have. President Donald Trump is a liar. There is no evidence of any wiretapping of Donald Trump by the previous president of the United States. And what's more, the FBI is indeed investigating Russian ties to the Trump campaign and activity during the election time. Interestingly enough, that investigation was underway at the time James Comey took steps to make sure the public knew they were investigating Hillary Clinton, didn't let on that he was looking into Donald Trump as well. As we know, that had some effect on the outcome of the election. Members of the Republican committee were not too concerned, it seems, with the Russian involvement in the election. Their interest is mostly in partisan politics. They say it's time for another investigation of Hillary Clinton. Sure, why not? Russia investigating, operating in the U.S. elections versus Hillary's email, easy choice for Republicans. Well, back in Little Rock, spring break this week for most school kids, and so it's slow at the Capitol, oddly enough. Not any big news. There was expected to be perhaps some action today in a Senate committee on a bathroom bill, an effort to discriminate against transgender people as North Carolina did. So far that hasn't come up. There's a rising tide of opposition to this bill, including from the film industry, which says it would give Arkansas a bad name. Of course, we have a few other things on the record already that don't help us very much in that regard. The governor's going to have a big ceremony tomorrow to sign the bill that does away with the dual observance of the Martin Luther King, Robert E. Lee holiday, and the governor certainly deserves some credit for putting a significant amount of lobbying weight behind the effort to end this rather embarrassing dual observation for Arkansas. Can't hurt our image, although there are a lot of other things out there that do hurt our image much more than this. Of course, nobody celebrated Lee's birthday on the third Monday in January, and it was just really the old dead enders of the South that hung on trying to preserve the dual recognition. What's far more important is what's still out there doing things that undo Martin Luther King's legacy in Arkansas, including efforts by the legislature to make it harder to vote. Imagine that. It's hard to see how you pat yourself on the back for a little holiday when you're making it harder for black people to vote, but that's the Arkansas legislature. There was introduction of legislation today to rewrite the school accreditability bill. Check back with our Arkansas Times blog on this. Benji Hardy's taking a look. It's a sweeping piece of legislation. Not entirely sure yet what it means in terms of, for example, control of the Little Rock School District, which is currently under state receivership, and whether this will make it easier or harder for those schools to once again be governed by a democratically elected board rather than the state education commissioner. Funny moment in a House committee this morning. John Walker, the liberal line legislator from Little Rock, didn't like the idea of passing a law that required yet another test for Arkansas school children. This is the new law that says all Arkansas students to get a high school graduate diploma must pass the civics test that's given to people who try to become naturalized citizens. Walker proposed two modest bills, one that legislators be required to pass the test too, and also state agency directors. As you can imagine, members of the Arkansas legislature weren't too willing to submit themselves to a civics test, although they were willing to do it to students. His bills didn't make it out of committee this morning. Interesting note from South Dakota, because it's a situation that has a parallel here. The governor of South Dakota, who's a Republican and who's an NRA supporter, vetoed two bills to loosen gun laws there. One allows guns in the state capital of South Dakota. One makes it very easy to carry a gun around, no need to get a concealed carry permit anymore. As you may know, there's a bill sitting on Governor Hutchinson's desk, no action yet, that allows gun carrying in the state capitol, among other ways that it loosens gun law. The governor is expected to sign that bill, but hasn't said so yet. Whether he's having any last-minute doubts, we don't know. Problem is that in South Dakota, a veto override takes a 2/3 vote. In Arkansas, it's a simple majority. If the governor were to veto this bill here, it likely wouldn't survive his veto. The legislature would override him, given the margins that it passed. Some other odds and ends around. One is yet another major city with huge traffic is going to tear up a freeway and put in a boulevard instead to knit a neighborhood back together. That's New York City. Stupid Yankees. What do they know? Don't they know you're supposed to widen freeways, not tear them up? Here in Little Rock, we know the right thing to do. Interesting op-ed piece too in the New York Times today, questioning whether Arkansas can carry off without a hitch. the plan to execute 8 people in 10 days in April so we can get out ahead of expiration of an execution drug. This has had bad side effects in other states that have tried to do this. There's a powerful case made in this op-ed piece by 2 death penalty lawyers about how this is a bad idea to rush things like this. Tremendous pressure placed on the execution teams, for one thing, to get the job done right, and many questions about the drugs that are used. And finally, just for some fun, take a look at the Arkansas blog for an interesting piece from Harry Thomas, and the TV producer, an old friend of Bill Clinton, telling some stories about when he dealt with Chuck Berry, the legendary rock and roller who died a few days ago. He engaged Berry to play at a couple of Clinton events, including the 1993 inaugural and later a G8 summit of the world's great countries. Chuck Berry was happy to do it, but he had to be paid, and he had to be paid in cash. Funny story about rounding up the money at one of those particular events, and one of the happy people in the crowd was one Tony Blair. Loved to see Chuck Berry, his idol. I'm Max Brantley. Maybe I'll have some good news tomorrow, but I'll still resist.